Yeah, if you have $200,000 laying around to spend on making friends that's gonna get you a job later, by all means. I'm just kidding. $200,000. MBAs cost way more than that. All jokes aside, an MBA is a master's in business administration. It's a master's degree of business, but no one calls it master's in business administration. It is often, if not always, abbreviated as MBA. A little fun fact for you guys, as I found out while making this video, it's an MBA, not a MBA, because when you pronounce MBA, M is pronounced EMM, so it's a vowel start, hence an MBA instead of a MBA. My title is not a typo. An MBA is considered a fresh start, a clean slate for business professionals, for people in the corporate world that have done something else, get an MBA, and they start over using that focus/concentration that you studied there, the network that you gained by being part of that school, the alumni base, those that you study with, professors, all become extensive, heavy connections, and they get you to jobs that you previously couldn't have entered, perhaps because of your job experience, perhaps because of the limitations of your undergrad degree. It's a good option to have, but as I joked before, it is pricey, it is you going back to school, and it's a multiple year commitment. So it is something that you should put some thought into, regardless of if you're thinking about it for pivoting into investment banking or not. I think specifically for investment banking, especially if you didn't go to a target university for undergrad and that was your main barrier to entry, perhaps you actually did go to a good school, but it just happened to not be a target school for banking, a target school for finance. You have what it takes, you've had good industry experience, you've had great non-industry experience, and you still want investment banking, but all you lack is the name brand, the network, the gateway into the world of finance, then an MBA is a great way to get in. Do note that if you're already an analyst at a bank and you want to stay in banking and you're already up for ADA or analyst to associate promotion, the requirement of having an MBA to promote within the company that used to be the case for the older generations is slowly becoming no longer the case. There are individuals who tend to keep moving up without an MBA. I will say on that point, and I think this might be causation versus correlation, but most people that I do research on for attendee profiles of MPs, for networking purposes, people in the industry of finance, typically MDs, partners at private equity firms, have MBAs. I don't know if this is a function of them being part of this older generation where MBAs are required, or if it is that people who do end up making it to the top do have MBAs, or a correlation where people who do move to the top have a tendency to overachieve and want greater networks, greater things, so they get an MBA. I'm not sure if it's one of those things specifically, if it's a juxtaposition of all three, or even though it's not written anywhere specifically that you need an MBA to get somewhere, it is probably necessary as everyone that you're competing with has it anyways. I will highlight the fact that in the older days, it was somewhat required on paper that you needed an MBA to get promoted within an organization, and I don't believe that's the case anymore. Let's say you didn't go to Target University, you unfortunately couldn't be part of the analyst recruitment process or failed or did not obtain a summer internship or full-time offer while doing so, and you've worked in something else. You worked in accounting, you worked in due diligence, you worked in audit, something relevant to the finance/accounting industry, or something completely unrelated, maybe construction management, tech, software engineering, and you want to make the switch to banking. The MBA is your route. As I mentioned before, it is kind of this restart switch where you're a student again and companies are coming directly to the schools to recruit these candidates. They call them MBA associates, so you won't start as an analyst but as an associate because they want to consider the experience that you had, the MBA education that you received, and you'll start as an associate at these firms. Personally speaking, for my company alone, we have a lot of MBA associates. If anything, a lot of associates/VPs are those that didn't necessarily start as an analyst, but they went through the MBA process. They had other industry experience prior, and they became MBA associates and then were promoted through the company. I think this is the most optimal route for those that didn't have the target school experience, that didn't have the opportunity to recruit directly as an analyst, or weren't able to get those opportunities even if they did recruit. A lot of the questions that I get on my videos is, do I need an MBA to get into investment banking? I don't think you need an MBA to get into investment banking, but if you're in the category of people that I just described, I think it is the most optimal way into breaking into banking. A quick off-tangent point that relates to MBAs, obviously, and my one pretentious comment of the day, but I think it is important that as you aim for an MBA program, especially if you're trying to get into banking or a prestigious job post your current career, to get into an M7, what they call an M7, the top 7 business schools, the top 7 MBA programs in this country. While there are plenty of other programs that are great and will get you a job, I think to heighten and to maximize your chances of getting into an IB firm or a better job than what you have currently, getting into this top 7 list is great for name value, for the level of education that you receive, but most importantly, the network that you gain out of having this degree, this title. It sounds pretentious, it is, and it sounds elitist, it is, but it's just the way that our society currently works. For reference, and this could be an easy Google search, but Harvard School of Business, Stanford School of Business, Columbia School of Business, which all have no specific names because, they are the School of Business. Then there's MIT's Sloan, Chicago's Booth, Northwestern's Kellogg, and UPenn's Wharton, all of which were in no particular order to not offend anyone out there with an MBA from any of those schools. I just blurted them out from the top of my head. They weren't even alphabetical, please don't kill me. Aside from the name value and networking and the education, which all juxtaposes into this point, firms specifically hire out of these schools. They go to career fairs at these schools to hire these students specifically, and these function as the new wave, the new filter of target schools that you previously had. So while it's very challenging to get at these schools, these are very, very nice name brand schools. I think it's important to aim for them and try your best to get into these if your goal is to get into investment banking or the best job that you can get out of an MBA. My personal thoughts on this topic, and I joked about it a little before, I do think it's important to have a network. It's important to have a clean slate if you're trying to do something else. It's important to have that ability to pivot, which an MBA does provide. I think it's especially helpful for people that perhaps went to school not knowing they wanted to do finance because of the school, what it's known for, and its lack of being a target school. You weren't able to get into banking, even though you're qualified for it, you're smart enough for it, and you want to do finance. Then I think an MBA is the ultimate way to pivot. However, in my perspective, for someone in my shoes and trying to understand with my limited scope of how this world works, and I mentioned before, again, that it seems like a lot of the people in higher level up, respectable positions have MBAs. Whether that's a function of an older generation or a requirement or an unspoken requirement, I'm not sure. But something that I see a lot, at least in my perspective and those within the finance world, are people that do 2 years of banking, go to a private equity firm and do 2-3 years there, and then get an MBA to pivot into a different PE firm or something completely different. I struggle with this because perhaps it takes all that to realize what you truly want to do. And after 4 years in the industry, 5 years in the industry, it requires a school to get you to understand that. And you want to expand your network beyond what you can do by yourself through your company and what you had in your undergrad experience. However, seeing how common and frequent this is amongst the finance world, the juniors of the finance world, I can't help but wonder, can't you come to this conclusion without spending $200,000 and 4 years of your life? Maybe I'm naive. I almost want to go back on what I just said because I know for a fact in my life there have been things that I wouldn't have been able to realize if it wasn't for the experience, if it wasn't for the years of accumulation of thought and understanding that something is not for me or something is for me because I experienced that or something that's opposite of that. But it seems too formulaic and almost a path that you have to take if you're in this sphere. And I wonder if it's truly worth the time and the money and a thing you do just because others have always been doing it. And I struggle with this. I see the merit of doing something the way that it's always been done because clearly people are doing it because it works / there's a reason why it's the popular way to do it. But on the other side, I don't know how I feel about doing something that requires a lot of money, a lot of time, just to reach the same conclusion of IB, PE, MBA, something else. Or even worse, in my opinion, IB, PE, something else, PE or IB again. As always, thanks everyone for listening to my scramble thoughts all over the place. Also realize that I don't have an MBA, so I may fully not know what I'm talking about. This is just my experience in seeing people who get MBAs, who are in the process of trying to get an MBA, or people that have already gotten their MBA. More importantly, well, maybe not more importantly, an MBA is important, but thank you for 7,000 subscribers. Crazy. I think the recent private equity video gave me a pretty big jump in subscribers and views. Really appreciate it. And as always, see you guys next week. Let's go.